Hello, everyone, and welcome to Arcana Llama, Ep.5. You're here with myself, Atlantis, Justice, and a special guest today. We have JDZ.
Greetings and salutations, Arcana Llama. I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for allowing me to join the program. I'm excited. Let's get active.
Thank you for joining us. So this week we have a very interesting development. We have the first data for the Winterspell meta, which Justice is going to get into just a moment. And then stick around as we look at some of the deck lists that we think are worth your attention. But as always, let's start with that meta share. Justice, take us away.
Yeah, exciting first bit of a look here, what people are doing. This is taken from, people playing online, and it highlights a couple of really interesting things. So Blurple, this is sort of by best of three meta share at the top. We lead off with Blurple, and then we have blue-yellow, number 2 on this list for meta share, probably for like the first time ever that's been said. Green-yellow, amber steel back up a little bit. And then, some interesting highlights in the sort of middle of this table. Ruby Sapphire back maybe for a little bit of something, and Amber Ruby pulling some numbers that it has not had in a little while. And so, we're looking at 12 fairly reasonably played decks right now that people are trying out and looking at stuff. And then there's just a couple, I guess Ruby Steel and an Emerald Ruby. Maybe this set isn't the one for them either, or maybe people just aren't interested in them yet, right? They haven't exactly found the cards they want to be playing in them. There's the flip side to this also is just what's doing well. So big caveat for this: these numbers should be taken with a huge grain of salt. The really high win rates that we're seeing on decks like Blurple and Purple Steel and Yerple has a lot to do with the fact that they are just Amethyst decks doing well, having a consistent proactive game plan, and probably beating more experimental test decks that everybody else is playing. The trends are really the more valuable thing to look at here. All of the decks that are kicking about at 50-ish% are all actually probably fairly well positioned and likely have a spot within the meta. The ones to be more worried about are the ones that are showing a 40% best of 3 win rate right now. That does include Amber Ruby and Ruby Sapphire. But there's also sort of an odd one out here for, Green Blue. Not very popular, not reporting a very high win rate. A lot of people have been kind of doom and gloom on the socials for Green Blue, right? I think Grandmother Willow has got people twisted up in a little bit of a funk. But even taking that into account, it actually seems like a really low number to me when I feel like Green Blue, just coming off of set 10, is still in a really good spot, right? It's a list that is fairly immune to a lot of other decks and what they want to be doing. I wouldn't have thought that it would be too bad of a pick going into the meta. So I think I might, not worry about that too much if you're interested in playing Green Blue. It's probably still all right. What do you guys think? Anything interesting on here that speaks to you?
So I've had chance to speak to Fungus, and he said that the green-blue match at the minute is something he is kind of almost thinking of abandoning because it's just not got good game into a lot of what people are playing in these initial first weeks of testing. I think it also goes without saying that, or I think I need to reiterate that the information that we see in this first week is obviously always going to be very skewed purely because it's almost what people want to play with the fun decks, right? We've seen a massive representation of red blue in terms of people playing it in the pre-testing for Lorcana, but I don't think red blue is a very good deck. The decks that have been doing well at Sapphire Amethyst and Steel Amethyst, these are decks that are linearly powerful, that people don't really need to put anything new, though we have had new assets like Sven that have gone into them, which kind of make the aggro matchup a bit better. And I said it kind of last week and you disagreed with me, but the Grandmother Willow, I do think is maybe a bit of a trap for some of these decks. We're starting to see Dogs players try to fit that in shells where they're running the Lilo and Stitch package, trying to get this big shift off and then go Purge and start doing all of those combo shenanigans. But I think the power that you lose from those where you're going into a load of one questers with low bodies isn't worth the potential high roll that you get for those type of decks. JDZ, have you been seeing anything in that field? Have you done any testing yourself?
I've done my own fair share of testing, but like you guys may know, I take the game a little less serious than I probably should. And I see a very similar trends even in my observations and things of that sort. But looking at this list, one thing that kind of jumps off the page to me is that Emerald Steel is played at such a low amount. I never would have guessed that it would have been the least played deck in this new metagame. I thought that it would at least have some kind of playability. And also another thing that I like to see, looking at this at the top echelon of this list, you see that we have the Sapphire Amethyst, you have the Amber Sapphire, you have the Amber Emerald. I believe once this meta has solved itself and resolved itself, those three decks might make up the Triforce of our new metagame going into the next set. Very similar to how we had in the previous set, just replacing Sapphire and Emerald with Amber Sapphire as the new primary control deck. So very cool stuff, seeing this thing all laid out like this. This is so nice over here. You guys are so clean in the Arcana Llama. I like it.
Yeah,
It's worth noting the Amber decks are actually like really shot up, right, with some of the new cards, right? They got a lot of powerful new tools. And Green Steel is an interesting call out there, actually. I think it's got a lot of fun cards in it.
It does!
Shocking that it's like not being played.
What we'll probably end up seeing in the first couple of weeks, these decks that are quite easy to put together, so the Amethyst decks, especially with those shells, we'll see those dominate the early test. So if you're thinking of Axion or you're thinking of Ink, expect to see a lot of Amethyst, expect to see like a lot of dogs. But as we've discussed previously in the channel, as we move towards the middle or the end of the format, some of these decks are a bit more harder to fix. One deck that comes to mind is Amber Sapphire, which hasn't got like an amazing representation here in terms of win rate. It is technically negative, but you can see a lot of people are putting playtest games into it. It's got like nearly 14,000 best of 1 games and 4,000 best of 3 games. I think that deck is definitely one to look for. I've seen some people underground kind of saying that they're starting to fix it, they're starting to get an idea for it, which is very impressive considering we're not even had the pre-release yet for Winterspell. But definitely as you're moving towards Ghent, expect to see more decks like that. I think what we'll do is we'll move away from the meta share for a second, and it seems only natural that since Amethyst Sapphire there was the most represented deck that we talk about that first. So this is one of the deck lists I've got. This is by a gentleman named JDZQuest. If anybody knows him, he's very, very popular in the Lorcana scene. He does the Blower Farm. And he puts out Amethyst Sapphire and Amethyst Steel decks every single set on his Metafy. So you can check him out there. Not sponsored. He's just a great guy and he deserves recognition. This list is running a lot of what we'd expect. It's running the Cheshire Cats to do the boost shenanigans. It's running Iago. I really like Iago here because a lot of decks are cutting their responses to that. We used to be seeing, especially during sets 9 and 10, the Blurple were playing a lot of like 4 Hypnotic to try and deal with this, and most of them are cutting it from their predominantly list. So if you're going into one of those early events like Axion or Ink, and you're not running Iago removal, then this deck is going to just take advantage of you. Then we go a bit more heavy, where we're running like the Demona and Hades for extra draw package, and the new package of Let It Go, which I think was a terrible reprint because it's just giving Sapphire more builds. But yeah, so it's a very solid list. I think looking at it, the one thing I'm questioning is like the number of 1-drops. I'm concerned that you would maybe brick too much on this, but I'm interested to see what you two think about it and whether or not you think 10 1-drops is appropriate.
I'll let you take it away first, Justice, if you want to have your piece, and I'll jump after you.
I think 10 1-drops is like pretty reasonable, especially when you want to be stabilizing early reliably, right? This is a deck that's probably assuming a decent turnout of green yellow, which I actually don't think I would count on seeing in paper, even though it like pulls high in testing right now. And obviously Let It Go is a huge new get for this list, right? So this is only playing 2, but Blurple now has the option to play for Hades and for Let It Go. And that's really powerful, right? It's more good songs for Hades to be able to pull for you and to sing. And I also think Iago is a great like week 1 card. You really want to be playing it precisely because people are dropping their answers to it. And then it's somewhat ironic that this deck is running no Iago answers itself. And one of the things you have to consider with JDRR's lists is that he is very popular and a lot of people look to his decks, especially early on in the set. I think there's, you could I would confidently say 80% of the purple steel players at Richmond were probably playing JDRR's purple steel build card for card. And he sets the tone for what you can expect to see in a lot of those lists, both at the start and at the end of the events. So, if you were playing this, I would be thinking about the mirror as a possible thing you have to look out for, and wanting to find some Iago answers in there somewhere. What do you think, JDZ?
I agree. I mean, looking at this list, though, one thing that jumps off the page to me immediately is like, if this is day one and you are going to a tournament to play, you already have this deck from the previous set, you're kind of golden, because this deck doesn't include any of the new cards from the newer set, and it just adds Let It Go, a card that has already been a part of the game since set number one. So you kind of slot that in right away and immediately get active and do your thing. So I would like to see some of the new cards being experimented. I've seen Tigger, I've seen Sven, and those cards have been having pretty good results, at least in my own observation and experimentation. And maybe you can have those things be added to kind of help you. But leaning on all these one-cost characters, maybe that's the compromise that you're going to make. So the deck looks rock solid. I mean, I'm always going to shout out JDR as well. I think he is the Amethyst icon at this point. People always look to him for these ideas, and if he puts it out there, then certainly it has to have some type of merit or value. So I agree with it, but I'd like to see some more. Give me some new cards. We got new cards in these new sets. All these game designers and artists have created all these new cards. Let's get them into these decks, huh? Let's figure it out. Whatever. That's my hot take of the day. Play new cards. All right. Winterspell.
Yeah. I think the Moana would be like a great include over the Hades, possibly.
Mm-hmm.
She maybe has nicer spots in other decks, but as just like a guaranteed value, like resource generation card, especially in like the mirrors for these blue decks and these Amethyst decks, she's like a really solid turn over turn resource generator, right? And like a 4/4 2-quester is pretty, like, that's a decent upgrade on a 3/4 quest for one, even if it takes sort of like 2 turns to get 2 cards worth of value. So, I'm not a huge fan of this Hades. I don't think you are either, Atlantis, and that's maybe somewhere you could be looking at for new cards.
So I'm going to disagree with you on the front of the Moana. I playtested her a little bit, and I felt like Blurple overall was maybe just too slow to take advantage of it. She definitely shines in decks like Blue Steel or even Amber Sapphire, where they really want to take advantage of just putting things into the ink and then keeping that hand full so that they've got more answers and stuff, where Blurple consistently wants to just keep playing things out. And even though the Moana has got good steps, the comparison there is like the new Pete, the 5/5, the quest for one, and if you boost it, it can start looking into your deck and pulling things. And then this Hades, this 5-cost 3/4 Hades, looking for a deal. When you play him, choose one for your opponent, and they either draw 2 cards or you get to put that card into the bottom of the deck. He has felt very important for how much tempo these lists are running at the minute. So, we were seeing like a 40% meta representation with Blurple in pre-testing. If you're running this card and your opponent's not, you have so much advantage purely on the fact that you're going to have more cards in your hand at any given time. And yeah, Demona helps with that a little, but if you're running on the fact that you're just playing Demona, your opponent can take advantage of that by just keeping the hand down and then getting the advantage off it when you play it. And that's why it feels bad when your opponent's going into their turn with 4 cards and you've had to play out your hand just so that your Demona doesn't get tapped sideways and get punished for that. So the Hades has felt very important in this playtesting. You're right, I don't like the card. I think it's more of a necessary evil than anything else, but I am tempted to try and see if there's anything else I can slot for it at the moment. Another deck that has kind of taken the community by storm in the recent testing is Amethyst Amber. Sorry, not Amethyst Amber, Emerald Amber, or Dogs as it's known as. There's a bit of discourse around this, like what's the correct way to play it? Is it the Stitch combo? Is it running, the new Grandmother Willow? You have some thoughts on this, Justice, that you've been quite vocal about, but do you want to try and get that down for us so we can make sense of it?
Yep. So, if you've seen people talking about this on social media, you have probably seen people talking about the Rockstar Stitch builds. I do not think that that is the best way to be playing the Dogs deck. It has some trade-offs compared to what I'm calling like a stock list here. It is better into the mirror with more shift lines that get you the ability to sing Under the Sea and a good way to actually dig to that under the sea as you're drawing cards with the Rockstar Stitch. What it loses for being better into the mirror is it's worse into the Amethyst decks. Cutting Lady 5 and, not always playing Chromicon, those are big tools that you lose, which normally help those matchups be, as favorable or at least close to even as they are for the Dogs deck. And that is on paper a really bad trade to be making to sort of improve your 10% mirror at the expense of your 35+% like Blurple and Amethyst Seal matchups. So I don't think that it's correct to be looking at that. This is instead a bit more of an expression that actually, Dogs as it was, for my choice, the best or second best deck of the previous set. And we're really just playing the best new cards, which I think are the Grandmother Willow and the Nani. And these do a couple of things for this deck. The Nani is like a better version of a lot of the 3-cost units that we were playing in like our 54th to 60th slot in this deck. Sometimes like the Clarabelle 3-cost was a good option because she might be able to draw you one. This Nani is like a turbocharged version of that, looking at your top 4 for a 2-cost or lower character. She really helps you like continue to maintain your gas and is pretty flexible in both like the, mid and later game. And the Grandmother Willow, what she really brings to this deck is she makes it faster. She lets you hit like a turn 3 tramp 7 pretty reliably, which is surprisingly huge into decks that are threatening to like LCU. You can get that tramp 7 down before your opponent can play their Elsa now into Blurple. But she also makes the deck easier to play, which one of the problems with Dogs is that it's a very difficult list to consistently navigate correctly. And with the Willow actually, making that a little bit easier, I think one of my fears is that we'll see more people on this deck because it is easier to play with the Grandmother Willow. The really only other sort of notable call out here is, I'm still on a heavy count of Dellas because I think you do have to continue to respect cards like items or like illusions. And you can't just be cutting those kinds of tools from your deck because it's, week 1, you're testing different things and you're not expecting to run into 4 Iago. But as we've just seen in the JDR's Blurple list, I would expect most Blurple players on week 1 to probably be playing them still. And I think you need to be ready.
I concur. I mean, the deck looks rock solid. It's going to be there. I mean, even if you have the core philosophies of what this strategy is trying to do, however you're going to build it, it's going to be very powerful, very potent, and ever present in our metagame. Like I said, the Grandmother Willow, I'm sure everyone has just been beaten to death about how broken they think this card is. And I just concur with that sentiment as well. This deck does look good. I like I like a little bit of high roll. I like to just have these super powerful blowout things that you can do. So I am kind of gravitating towards the Rockstar build or more like the Mulan stuff, because that just seems so obnoxious when you get it, when you're able to pull it off at the cost of maybe some consistency. But this deck does look awesome, and I'm certain it's gonna be there at the end for sure.
Would you take
Mulan
a
is
list like
definitely
Would you take a list like Rockstar into a DLC? Like if you were doing DLC again and you were competing, do you think that's the way that people should be playing it? Because I'm more inclined to a list like this. I'll get your feedback and then I'll kind of explain why, if that's okay.
For me, I would. I love to. If I were going to DLC and I had to play, and I convinced myself that I was going to play the Amber and Emerald Dog strategy, I'm going to take the Rockstar version just because of the high roll factor. Because they're not going to always have their answers too. And I think if you can build it in a pretty consistent fashion, or if you get your thing that you're trying to do, it's gonna be lights out. And I like those quick lights out matches. Maybe it's a volatile thing, but I like to hear your thoughts on this, Atlantis, and just as well.
So my concern with the Rockstar package is that you're obviously having to run the Stitch, the Shift Stitch, you're having to run the Lilos, the Pudges. A lot of the stats on those, they're like 1/3s or 1/2s, so they put you in Cheshire range or they put you in Elsa and challenge range. Obviously, you can just not see the combo. And then if for whatever reason you don't win by turn 5 or turn 4, it often felt like for me when I was playing against it as Blurple, I kind of didn't need to worry about what your top decks were from that point. So long as I didn't give you 2 cards, which was Stitch and something else, and you couldn't just like fill the board out again, I felt very safe because nearly everything you were playing was questing for 1. And for a deck that needs to be putting on aggro pressure of some description, if I've got you at 11 lore and you're putting out a load of top decks that quest for 1, I'm just not afraid of you anymore. I'll almost just go sideways, and I don't even need to keep the removal in hand.
So I think the big thing there is that there's actually a similar density of like 1 and 2 questers between both decks. But the big difference with a lot of the Rockstar lists I think people are testing to begin with is that they're not playing the Necronomicon. And you need to be doing that to help sort of stabilize in those positions later game. There's actually plenty of upsides for the Rockstar. If your Blurple opponent is like ramping you a lot with the Hades and the Let It Goes, your Rockstar's late game, combined with just like any other cheap characters in hand, become an ability to flood out and reclaim the board. But if you're not able to back that up with the Chromicon to actually, maintain a tempo lead at that point, once you start doing that, you are just going to get run over by stuff like, to Amethyst Steel. If they have a couple of Calhouns out, it doesn't matter how many characters you flood out with, Rockstar, he's gonna get strength, and then you're gonna lose the little guys to Calhoun, and they're actually gonna gain lore faster than you're able to threaten it. And it's a similar situation to Blurple where, between the cat, between the Elsas, they're just going to keep trading down your board, and undefended wide board is actually not that strong into them. So definitely keep playing the Chromicon if you're looking at the Rockstar builds. I know LD put one out that is also on 2 Chrom, 2 Under the Sea. I think it just pays to be, to continue respecting the really powerful game warping cards like that.
Sure. I think we could talk about this list for ages, but in the interest of moving on and seeing some of the other stuff that we've got behind the scenes, I'm going to move us away from this list and move us to one that JDZ has prepared for us. JDZ, I really like the way that this list is presented. It's obviously got a theme. It's maybe not as competitive as some of the other lists that we've got showcasing, but sometimes it's nice just to see what's on the other side of the fence, what we can be playing. So do you want to break this down for us?
Listen, let me tell you guys something, okay? These are the best deck. This is the best deck in the farm. I don't want to hear that, Atlantis. This is the number 1 pick. If you're going to get, this is the deck you should take. No, I'm kidding. This is just a deck that it's a passion project. It's a pet project. It's something that I've been wanting to try since the Sugar Rush and the Speedway card have come out, and we're getting to the point where these cards are about to be rotated soon. And if it's not now, it's going to be never. So we got to figure out a way to get these cards played. And I'm just trying to use all the new cards that were given to us in this set, in addition to some of the cards that kind of work with them from before. So the new cards we have is that new Beast. When he's at a location, he can challenge and has Brush, and he doesn't take damage, or put damage, or place damage, or dealt damage, whatever he says. Okay, he doesn't something damage Beast location. He can't get it when he's challenging in. So you can just put him into the Speedway for free, and you can probably get a plus if you can line it up correctly. I'm also using the Liquidator. I think that's one of the better underdogs in the set, and he kind of fits nicely until Angel comes and just rocks his whole world. We're not going to talk about that, okay? We're not going to keep any negativity here. And I have a lot of the other location stuff. So what we're trying to do, we're just trying to get the Sugar Rush, get the Speedway, and then there are some inherent synergies there with the Elsa, the small Elsa, and then Shift Elsa. She can move it to the Sugar Rush quest for 3, and maybe not even run the whole lap and just kind of maybe close the game out, because once this stuff starts rolling, it is bad, okay? But I want some ideas to how we can potentially make this deck a little bit better. Because I have played games, and once this stuff is looping, you have the mini going, you have the islands that pull from the sea going, you have the get to safety going, and it just starts to loop. You get like this, you're getting 3 lore every single turn, and maybe sometimes you can even do it more, and you get Elsa involved and she's questing. I have beaten people with this deck. I am not like undefeated by any means, but I have defeated people with this deck, and I also have the healing Goofy there, so you can do the Sugar Rush loop, and then they take that damage, place that damage, put the damage, and then he can ready them again and heal them and whatnot. So it kind of allows them to do another circuit whenever you can recycle all those cards again. The deck is not great, but I'm just trying to put it out there to get some more ideas to potentially help, get the juices flowing, get people out of this super competitive mindset all the time, because it's unhealthy.
I have a couple of ideas for where I think this could potentially go. Have you by chance tested the new red location that puts cards under it, and then at the beginning of your turn returns those cards back to your hand as like a second source of card draw?
I didn't. That's the one I've been thinking about that one. That's actually not a bad one. I know the
Yeah.
one you're talking about. Lonely Grave. No, not Lonely Grave. Winter
Don't
Wonderland. Dark Call. The one that looks like it doesn't look like a Lorcana card. It looks like very mysterious and
Yeah, it's got
ominous a
like
little
8
bit.
willpower or something. I don't remember exactly what it's
Yeah,
called, but it's like for each
Graveyard
character
or
that's
Christmas
underneath
Future or
it,
something.
it like puts
Hmm.
a card underneath and then returns it back at the beginning of hand. I thought that would be interesting as like a separate form of card draw. And then another card, the Moana, if you remember her, the football Moana, who's a
Oh,
captain that moves everybody into a location. You get 1 more for each character moved that way.
hmm.
That could be like a really nice way to just cheat out
I
Vor at the end
I
of the
did
game.
I did try that card in the earlier installments, and it wasn't working. It wasn't jiving for me. It just wasn't happening because I had the smaller one cost Moana, and she can't challenge or something. She needs a captain or something like
Yeah.
that, and it was just a mess, But it's a cool thing when it pops off. It's kind of a nice thing to see, but it's not often that it happens. But it can sometimes. Okay, there it is.
I
The
actually
guy.
think,
Sorry, go ahead, Justice.
the location synergy stuff is like really actually pretty powerful, right? Every time you get like Sugar Rushed Speedway comboed for 3 ink, you're looking at the board like, what's happening?
Yeah,
Your opponent just like gained a bunch of lore, drew a bunch of cards, and this has, this location synergy has one of the only cards in the game that's just like search your deck for a location and add it to your hand in
yeah,
the islands equals from the sea. I think that's as someone who sort of came from Yu-Gi-Oh historically, that's a really common effect in that game that is printed on almost 0 cards in Lorcana, and so that screams to me like super high impact build around that you should be considering. Uh, the Shift Elsa is like surprisingly, she's got a great stat line and she quests for a lot when you're at a location. The mini sort of recurring those locations back to you so you can keep going with the combo. The Fix It Felix. There was a deck that did well at an event. I don't remember exactly which one, but it was playing like, an Amber Steel locations deck with the Fix It Felix Jr. And there's, a good enough set of locations here that I actually think that there's something worth like looking at. This is absolutely a deck that you could take to an event and just have people be utterly unprepared for, right? All
right.
those locations have a great amount of health. They're very durable. And the rest of the characters, there's no bad characters really filling space here with maybe just the 1-drop 0/4 is like not bringing a lot on his own, but every other character is bringing powerful utilities to the deck, right? Daisy is an incredibly aggressive quester. The Mowgli is going to help you remove threats from your opponent's hand and make these locations just more difficult to interact with. The Liquidator gives you something really powerful to challenge with when you're going second, and the Beast, when you have a location to pop him into, becomes like a really effective threat. I think there's
I mean, it's
something
obviously
here.
it's a rogue deck, and it's kind of my wheelhouse. These are the decks that I like to play because again, I'm not gonna ever sit here and pretend like I'm the most competitive person. I like to like stay outside of try to do my own thing and be unique and try to play decks that I want to see. And like Justice said, just catching people by surprise and doing something unique and daring to be different and letting your hair down sometimes is just something I know it's going against the ethics of the Arcana Llama, but I'm here, okay, and this is what I'm going to bring. And if you sit down across from me, you're going to feel the thunder, the speed thunder. It's going to happen to you. And you're going to be going to the next game. And you're going to be like, what just happened?
Quick amendum here. In this next section, we're going to talk about Todd. His ability says when he is chosen for an action or an item's ability, so he does not actually work with Pocahontas or with Darling Deer. Don't let that dull my excitement for this deck. I'm still really interested in it.
Speaking of road decks, let's keep that momentum going then. So
Let's go. No, this one's heat. This one's heat. This is
I
heat
don't
right
want
here.
this to be rogue. I think this deck is going to be like real. I want to be
Okay.
working on this.
I'm a rogue rapscallion. Okay, this one right here might be closer than I care to admit. No, but seriously, it's a deck. I think I saw this online somewhere. I think someone made a post about it, and I was like, oh, that looks really cool. Let me try this myself. And this is kind of where I ended up with it. And again, it's a nice rogue pick. It's doing some really cool things with some nice, unique cards. We have the Todd, we have the Vixie, we have the Willow Tweed. That's just those cards together are, I feel, are powerful enough to at least give some attention to, or at least give it a chance to explore those routes or where it could be. If this is this the correct answer 100%? Probably not, but it's definitely giving some ideas of where you could potentially take it, because I like the idea of this new Todd character coming in for free from play, from the discard, being able to maybe put an improvise on him, ready him to get more lore. But the thought is you use the Darling Deer after the Todd is down to increase his lore power, or that new Pocahontas to increase his lore power. Now he's questing for more each turn every time you ready him. Trump can also ready the Todd as well. It just you might lose his strength or whatever, but you now can ready the Todd and get him another quest in. Also have that retro evolution device, because you can now leapfrog from the smaller Todd to the Widow Tweed to the bigger Todd back, or just kind of have those things kind of stair step each other. I think that's just a cool card that someone should be trying to use. And if it's got to be me, I'll try it. I'll run these gambits or whatever. And that's just I'll run the gambit if I need to, but that's just something I'm willing to do. And also the education or elimination. I think increasing Todd and also readying Todd is just seems fun enough to try. So I don't know. This is probably not it. I haven't played this one too many times, but in the short amount of time that I have tried it, it's been a lot of fun. And you can get some wins here and there.
I love this. I think the Darling Deer and the Pocahontas, and you can evolution device from the Pocahontas into the Darling Deer.
Now
get like your triple Todd quest off on like a single turn for only 4 if the Todd is ready. So that's like what, 2, and then another 3, and then another 5 in one turn. So that's 10 lore in like one turn when you kind of have access to those resources.
You can tell who the math guy is.
Yeah. As soon as I like read those 2 cards as you pulled up this list, it's like clicking in my head. It's like, oh, you can hop this not just from like the 2 to the 4. There's. I just think that this is like a deck waiting to be broken open. There are so many. Like this Todd card just has some of the most text printed on him of like doing stuff like you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like when you target him 2 different times, you can ready him up, and he doesn't care about. He cares about how often you ready him, not about how often you target him. So if you have a way where you can actually like boost his lore with the Pocahontas, the education elimination, and the Darling Deer, like more than 2 of those in a single turn, you can actually start laying them on him before he starts questing and getting that going. And I even want to say with like the evolution device, you can hop down with that as well, right? Like you can play a character that costs 2 more than it, but you can lead with the Darling Deer to get the extra 2 on the Todd, and then hop down into the Pocahontas if that's what you have in hand, or just to another Darling Deer to get like +4 on the Todd that turn. That just seems like, some really crazy possibilities there.
And the fact that he is still, a 6/6 guy, and he's still evasive, and you can get it in for free. Let's not forget the Widow Tweed is still doing her thing. We have the Bobby Zimaruski. We have the Strike a Good Match. You can set up your discard by putting the Todd there and then bringing him back later on with her. And you just have this whole, I don't know, it's still going to be a guy. You got the Circle of Life in there. I don't know, maybe Circle of Life is probably not needed here, but I was just thinking of, discard the Widow Tweed, Circle of Life her back, and then the Todd follows and the Tramp. There's cool stuff. There's a lot of really cool cards in these color combinations, and people just got to get out there and try it, and see what works. But maybe, like I said, this probably isn't the final resting place for this strategy, but I'm excited to see. You guys, let me know what you think at home if you're watching this, and hit the subscribe button and follow the Arcana Llama, and maybe you can let me know what you think. If it's trash, tell me it's trash, but don't hurt my feelings.
There's no way this deck is trash. I think this deck is like waiting to be real. There are so many interesting tools available here, right? You've got the underdogs. You've got not just the Angel here, but also the Emerald one, the 2/2 evasive, is like a card you could play more copies of and play a full playset of Strike a Good Match. Strike a Good Match, I didn't even realize when I first read it was like a reprint card. I read that card and I went, this card's great. Like, I want to play this in green decks. And then I was like, this card's not new. We weren't playing this in every deck pre-rotation, which there were other cards pre-rotation that sort of looked better than it did. But in a post-rotation world, Strike a Good Match seems like exceptional to me. You've got this the Vixie that is cheaper if you've got like the Todd down, 1/3 evasive questing for 2. There's just so many good tools available for this deck.
I mean, you're talking Todd into Vixie. I mean, that seems good enough.
Good.
Like how can that be bad? I mean, if it seemed like a 1 into a 2 into a quest for 2 evasive thing, you're fine with that, I believe.
And if we're on the draw, like Angel or White Rabbit, do something like, have Strike a Good Match or a Cood to sing, or even like Della's Moon Lullaby is just a really powerful utility tool. There's, so many different little options to consider, and they all sound good. They all sound like there's something there.
Yeah, it's gonna take some serious reps out there before it makes it of super, because the meta is just so solid and these cards are so powerful. To have a deck like this break through and like cause a disruption, it's gonna take some time and it's gonna take a lot of effort. But if you're willing to do it, I think there's clearly something that can be discerned from this, I believe.
Kind of sounds like you need to be getting in there and grabbing all of these Tods as quickly as possible before someone breaks the deck and they all skyrocket in price. You heard it here first. Get those Tods now while you can. I like the deck. I think it has some cool synergies. We have seen things like this in the past with like blue and stuff, but it has a premium over that in my heart, and that's foxes. And anybody that knows me knows that I love foxes, and I will take any excuse to play a deck full of foxes if I can. So I'd probably take this to locals and have a lot of fun with it. I don't think I'd take it again. I think it will take a little bit of cracking. I think it's going to take longer than the 2 weeks that we have. But if somebody does crack it in that time, it'll be very interesting to see what direction they take it. Just off the thoughts for me, I think I'd probably cut the Circle of Life and the Tramps, maybe go down that direction of having more interaction, maybe Under the Sea to board wipe in, buy as many turns as possible to get the shift run off, and then just popping it with the Darling Deer, the Pocahontas, Education Elimination, a lot of things that you've already set up here, I think is a good package. And just kind of putting into those more stall effects to try and make the game go as long as possible so you can have that explosive turn.
Smart. See, I'm glad I came here. I'm glad. See, we're all learning. It's happening. Making notes.
Justice, do you want to talk to us a little bit about this blue steel? Because I've been seeing a lot of this in the current testing environment, and there seems to be a debate on whether or not this is good. I feel personally that the matchup into Blurple is probably more of a 50-50. Now, I don't know if that's what the data suggests, but it feels to me like the matchup is very play-draw disparate. And I'd be interested to see, as somebody that's quite experienced with this deck, you've played a lot of past sets, whether or not you agree and what you think the strengths somebody might have for picking this up and maybe taking it again.
So if you're telling me that this deck is 50-50 into Blurple, I'm feeling so good about it, because that is a historically extremely problematic matchup for Blue Steel. You just lose to Blurple because the Amethyst cards generally come out ahead of the Steel cards when you're playing a sort of 30 card mirror. The big thing I think that this deck has going for it is there's 3 new cards to really highlight in this list. Angel, Moana, and Pete. Angel and Pete are both allies, so they have a naturally perfect synergy with the Jasmine. She helps search them out. The Moana is a princess for the Cinderella, and the Angel, Moana, and Pete all do this thing where they kind of synergize to make the Angel a really reliable additional steel ping every single turn of the game, right? So you can go, ramp into Angel, start discarding your cards, play Moana on the turn after, and then you can just start inking those cards from your discard. It's like you're getting a free Fire the Cannons every single turn. Or you get into this Pete, and the Pete is helping give the deck another one of the Jasmine effect, except you can just keep stacking cards under him, keep digging cards deeper and deeper, and just continue to go through for that. This is, my very starting build on this. playing around some of that ally synergy. But I don't even necessarily know if it's needed because, the Shift Jasmine package is kind of nice, but in many ways, it's some of the least impactful cards in this list, right? We're not on Goliath here, but we could be looking at something like Hook and Goliath and possibly Develop Your Brain instead of Mulan. And then there's the entire angle to consider with, maybe we cut some of the more expensive allies and the Shift Jasmine package. And, what if we just playing the Sonic Aerial build? We got Let It Go back. You could play that either with Hades or instead of it. Cap your curve a little bit lower, play like a true 2-4-6, and use like the Goliath and the additional songs at the Aerial to just, establish control that way, and then continue to, ink your discard with Milana or pitch your extra cards with the Angel. So many possibilities there for like making this find a spot into the meta that, if you actually have a better Blurple matchup than we have historically, and I think Sonic Aerial is a card that goes a long way towards making that possible, I've been all of a sudden very excited. I think the Pete is also just like a great addition is that matchup because the 5/5 is very resistant to most things in Blurple. They would have to be playing the spend to kind of have like a good value trade on this. Otherwise, you're probably playing the Pete most often on turn 6. You're boosting it immediately, and then it's already now going to ramp you twice against like Hades or Elsa Plus Into the Unknown or Let It Go. So you can then start really playing over the top with some of those other things. And then there's, all kinds of flex options that aren't in here either. The Pluto 5 cost if you need the item removal, or the Ink Runner if you want a tool to like challenge evases with your steel stuff. I'm excited to be thinking about playing blue steel again.
Yeah, we've been seeing some changes to this list a little bit. So the Francesco seems to be one that's getting cut a lot. Now, I don't know if that's just because he's too expensive for the deck. We are still running docks and stuff like that, so we want to be able to keep filling our hand as quickly as possible. We achieved that through Goliath, which notably isn't in this list, but I've seen a lot of people running that as a 4-off, and then maybe teching this more out for things like you said, the Supersonic Warrior, or even just what's the character
that does?
No, I got a brain pop. I'm just going to move on. But yes, so the list feels very, very strong. And the addition of Let It Go, which again, notably isn't in here, but is extra removal, it just feels like Blurple. If I'm going first and I have the Elsa and I can shut off all the singers, then I'm going to win that game because it goes on long enough that you just don't get any momentum down. I've got a board that's too big. But in reverse, if you're going first and you have all of your singers and the songs, you can just pop everything that comes down, slam the Goliath down, and suddenly any removal I want to use as a Blurple player to take things off the field is just ramping you into more things so you can play a bigger curve, and everything has massive bodies and is questing for 2, and it is just a nightmare. And it is a reason that I'm considering bringing Monstro back, just so I can kind of go like bang, bang, bang. But this list feels very, very strong to me. I know some people don't agree. I was playing with Colin Sweet today, and he said that the Blue Steel community thinks that the Blurple matchup is really, really bad. Maybe they know something I don't, but this, I think, is very Play-Draw inspired, and I'd be very interested to see this crop up, and I think it will do, especially in the UK, because we have a massive Blue Steel presence in the UK.
For sure. And that's kind of where I met Justice as a Blue Steel alumni. I really enjoy Blue Steel. I'm glad that it's having its chance to maybe make a resurgence and potentially be a part of the metagame as like as another pick or an off meta pick or rogue pick or a solid fourth install, because it does have a pretty decent matchup spread, especially amongst the aggro stuff. And if this is going to be the way to play, I think Allies has a spot. Angel is just such a really cool card design. It's a really great card. I think it's one of the better cards in the set. I was down on it much early on in the set, but now seeing it come to life and what it's capable of, it's just such a powerful card. And I think this deck can use that the best for the reason that Justice said. Jasmine giving you more cards to discard, Pete giving you more cards to discard, Moana saving some ink. I think that's a really nice synergy, and it's going to be able to use that card the best. So I like it, man. Solid deck.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right. So this is the last list that we have today. So it's by a person called Decandio. Any OG Lorcana players will know who Decandio is. He was a great deck builder, kind of a pioneer. A lot of people waited to see what was Decandio doing, especially when it came to like Steel Song. And then he left us to go join Ravensburg. So sometimes he like gives us little crumbs like this where we get to see the decks, but a lot of the testing we have to do ourselves and try and figure it out. He never gives us a full list. So is this the final form of what this deck looks like? Probably not, but it's a good start. I spoke earlier at the beginning of the video where, there's a few people that play testing this. I know Jeremy from Lorcana has been doing it. He doesn't feel that the Blurple matchup is that good, which is surprising because a lot of people think that, or I've heard a lot of people say that the aggro matchup isn't the good one and the Blurple matchup is like more 3, where he's completely opposite side. He thinks the aggro matchup is 3 and the Blurple matchup is worse. So it's interesting that you can have 2 sides. I think that mostly hedges on how many copies you're running of Spooky Sight and Raging Storm. Raging Storm obviously makes you better against those Amethyst decks because they're a bit slower and you can just wipe everything. Whereas Spooky Sight doesn't hit most of that stuff because they're ramping and just going into their 4 cost, 5 cost, it misses most of that. Whereas vice versa, obviously Spooky Sight is targeting things that are 3 costs or less, so it's hitting all of those aggros, but it's not hitting the bigger packages. So that might be a reason that we're seeing that. But I think the main MVP of this list is that Black Cauldron, a card that we've seen absolutely no play outside of like rogue testing. Is suddenly come into its own in this format, and the ability to like recur Hades often, you wipe your board, you put Hades underneath it, and next you're just telling your opponent, yeah, you go ahead and play that expensive card. You already know what's coming, and it just sits there kind of taunting them. I've also seen some people playing like Lilo, so less down on the Spooky Side and more in the Raging Storm and playing the leader. So when you remove the board from the Raging Storm, in your next turn, you can just fill it straight back up with those Lilos that quest them for 2, and it just demands such a reaction from your opponent that I think there's a lot of love that can go into this deck, and someone will absolutely crack it. I'd be very surprised if we weren't getting towards the end of this step where this wasn't a mainstay.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you heard that this deck has struggles against Sapphire Amethyst Blurple. Like, if this deck can't beat Blurple, then I think what's the point? Like, that's got to be like one of your matches that you should be trying to beat the most consistent, because this is filling that role as the premier control deck. I should be able to beat the premier, mid-range control deck in Sapphire Amethyst. But it's interesting to hear that that's not necessarily the case. But I agree with you 100%. I believe when the smoke clears, this will be one of the premier all-stars of the format, one of the more heavy play decks, very similar to a Ruby Sapphire or Green Blue of the previous as before. It's going to be there. What it looks like at the end, I'm not certain, but maybe this is a good, for sure, great launching point.
I gotta love Jeremy. He's a great friend, but I think he's just, hard wrong about this one. This is a deck that's going to reliably struggle with aggro, and it should be reliably farming Blurple and other mid-range decks.
Mm-hmm.
For what it's worth, I actually think this is one of the least bait Decandio lists I've ever seen. I always like to keep an eye on what he's putting out there and telling us to take a look at. And sometimes it's really obvious. This is a list where I actually think every card has like a solid justification in this list. The Black Cauldron is a fascinating one. When you have a big, expensive board wipe like Raging Storm, you need to have a payoff for it. And so in, pre-rotation time, we kind of worked out that it was the McDuck Manor was the premier card that you would like find a way to sing, the Be Prepared, wipe the board, and play a couple McDuck Manors. And, you've got 18 health worth of locations on board, questing for 2 every turn. It, defined that format. It was one of the best decks. We don't have something of that quality to be playing post-rotation now to enable this Raging Storm, but the Black Cauldron seems like it's a great tool. I think it's great to have the Wasabi in here, both as respect for like Karmakon decks or in the mirror as well for the Black Cauldron, right? If you have access to break your opponent's Black Cauldron and they don't have access to remove yours, you're going to come out ahead in what is going to be, an inevitable and pretty long grind game. One thing I have heard people say about this deck is that the 3 cost options are all highly subjective, right? So Ohana, Horseman Strikes, and World's Greatest Criminal Mind are all, exceptional cards when they are the right tool at the right time. And they're also all cards that basically don't do anything outside of those spots. So there is a bit of an awkward scenario with this deck where it has all of the powerful tools to do everything, but they don't always play as nice with each other when you're, in the middle of the game or when you don't have the luxury of choice. So if this deck can find a way to sort of maintain a healthy hand, use the Peaks and the Moana and the Stitch to just like keep drawing cards, keep your hand full, have a flexibility of options to play with, then I think you're going to be in a pretty good spot. You should be able to answer everything. And, decks like Blurple, Amethyst Steel, even, Emerald Sapphire, you should be able to win all of these matchups.
Nice.
Very nice. Okay, so that seems to be all of the deck lists I have prepped, which is good. We've made good time. We've got a little bit of time before the rundown of our show, so if it's all right with both of you, just sit here and chat for 10 minutes. I'm most interested to see, JDZ, are you joining us again?
I am trying. I'm looking. I'm on the lookout for a ticket right now. If I can get a ticket, then I will come to Ghent as a player and as a media person, as a community person. I want to be there, but as of right now, no, because I don't have a ticket to come. I didn't get one in time.
I think you should be able to, collectively, right, viewers out there, give us a hand. If anyone sees one go up, give JDZ a tag. It is usually possible to get one fairly close to the event, and they do a good job of processing refunds consistently. So, you could maybe pop it open right now, and there's probably an okay chance that there's a ticket available for you. So you never know.
So I'm on the lookout. I got I have my setup, so maybe I can get that, like the bots and stuff. Hey, the ticket's available. I'll jump in there and see if I can snag one up, or someone's going to refund one, and I could probably grab one from them. But that's kind of the stopping factor, getting a ticket.
So something I wanted to ask you. It's completely unrelated to what we just talked about. Sorry, it's just like clicking in my head. I'm very interested. So when you come to these DLCs, sometimes you come as a caster, and I think you do an amazing job when you're casting, and I love watching you. You alongside Baker are my two favorite casters to watch when it comes to like these DLCs and stuff. So I'm very happy to have you on the channel. But like when you're competing, how does that feel to you? Does like your mentality towards an event change when you're kind of having those different jobs?
For me, I think that's a decision that you have to make at some point. I know a lot of players don't have to deal with that kind of thing, but for me, as a content creator, as a broadcaster, as a commentator, you have to I feel you have to kind of branch off in the path that you would like to choose. Either going to do that and be good at that, or you're going to be a great player. I don't think. I mean, maybe there's a world where someone can prove me wrong, but I don't think you can do both. Because when you are trying to dedicate yourself as a player, you have to make certain sacrifices. You have to really focus on certain things, and you can't do, the other side of it. What I mean by that, because I played at DLC Richmond as a player, and I went there and I made that decision to, hey, I'm gonna go there as a player, but I want to play and I want to do well, but I kind of wanted to have a good time. And then I think that benefited me greatly, because if I'm sitting down playing my opponent, they're like, hey man, I really like your content. I'm a huge fan of what you got going on. Thank you for what you're doing for the community. And then there's, a tense competitive match that engages there. And there's a bad discrepancy, or there's some type of fight or whatever. If things go south in any way, then now I played this guy, JDZ. He's not what I thought he was. This guy is a fraud or whatever. It just turns into this very negative thing. And I definitely don't want that. So I try to have a good time with everyone I'm playing with. Even when I lose, I never get salty. I'm always, very positive spirit with whoever I'm lined up against. And I think that's totally fine. So there's a ton of great players out there. If I'm going to be one of them, that's cool. If I'm not, that's also cool. But I'm here just for the spirit of community, trying to have a good time, trying to play with people and engage with people. And I think that's kind of the route that I would like to stay on. Because it's a little bit easier for me.
Super interesting here, because I remember speaking to Justice about this, like getting the channel set up. And I approached him. I was like, "Hey, Justice, do you ever feel like you'd ever want to do content creating in the Lorcana space? You're well known for your deck building, and sorry, not deck building. You're at Better Analysis. Although he is a good deck builder, to be said. I'll just put that out there quickly. Save face. And I was like approaching. I was approaching him and asking him about it. He was like, no, I'm always going to be a player first. Like, my dream is always to get to Continentals or Worlds and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And, somehow, I don't know how, but I managed to wrangle him to come do the show with me. But it's just very interesting to see, like, the different dynamics between the two different players. I mean, just as I'm sure you can speak more to that.
Yeah, it is exactly that trade-off, right? Because I do have an interest in like making content. I even have an interest in like exploring broadcasting. As much as I like looking at the data, I also love yapping, right? I'm more than happy I've been on other people's shows. We're doing this one here. And it actually seems like something that, I would have a lot of fun doing and be interested in. But the trade off is if you're going to cast an event, you cannot play in that event. And
Right.
so that is like an inherent limitation. And like you were saying, I put a lot of thought towards it, and we did the Brainiac deck building. You got to give yourself a lot of credit for that one. I'm always telling people that you were the primary inspiration from that. I did wrote a guide for that. Had people ask me about like doing coaching or doing more guides with that, and these are interesting things that I would like to dedicate some time to, but they always have to come at a cost of like taking away time that I would want to be testing or focusing on
Right.
myself as a player. And so, I've kind of had to sit down and think about that and go, at least for the time being, my priority is and is probably going to continue to be being the best player that I can be. And, you know, maybe at some point that changes, right? You find an opportunity to, uh, take a break from that or diversify your time and do other things. There are a lot of great players who manage to find, chances to be successful coaches and to be great content creators at the same time. And it's something to, I guess, continue to work at and try and find a balance on. But
Right.
it is a trade off you have to think
And,
about.
and to that point, I mean, and just final thought on this that I have that I was just thinking about because you inspired me, the Justice. I do think you're a great player, and I think I'm an okay player. But hypothetically, if I were to go to Ghent and I spike Ghent and get into the top 32, and they offer me an invitation to the European National Championship, and they said, "Hey, either you can come here and play in this, or you can broadcast this. Which one would you choose?" I'm choosing broadcasting 100% of the time because it's my passion. It's what I love to do. I love to tell these stories. I love to see what's happening. I love to see the expression. And I just love that aspect of it. It's my favorite thing to do. And I put myself in this position to be able to do that. So of course, I'm going to choose to do that. Even if I go to the World Championship, would you rather broadcast the World Championship or play in the World Championship? I'm picking broadcast every single time because it's just what I love to do. And
Yeah.
it's all about the passion for me. And the glory is for the next person. I'd rather be the person singing the songs than being what the song is saying about, if that makes sense. It's just maybe my weird personality flaw. I don't know.
I think at my stage of
It's-
life, I'm definitely leaning towards wanting to play. Like, my dream ambition is to be world champion one day. And I know I'm a
Mhm.
very, very long way away from that. I need to get to Continentals first and then make worlds and stuff. But, like, it has to happen at some point, right? If you keep putting the effort in,
Mhm.
maybe it can be me. It's got to happen to somebody. So why not me if I put the effort in? But, like, in the future, I've also expressed interest to like doing casting and stuff like that. I know there's people in the community that have that interest as well. JDZ is somebody that's managed to do that, is somebody who is successful and gets to cast these like amazing DLC experiences. Can we like
Mhm.
tear away the veils somehow and kind of show people how did you get into that? What was the approach that people would need to replicate to try and get to that experience?
I mean, for me, like I've been doing this for a long time. Like Lorcana is my second game. My first game was actually Yu-Gi-Oh! I did a lot of retro Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's kind of where I cut my teeth as a broadcaster commentator. I did it there, for years and years and years. And I've always, built a semi-sustainable audience there. And a lot of people from that audience like, hey, you should come into Lorcana. You should do this. You should, because that is, you have these strengths in this field. You should explore Lorcana because it's more current, it's more real. You can probably have success there. So I jump into Lorcana, and it's difficult to get your foot in that door. I'm not trying to gatekeep anything. I'm not trying to hide any information, but it is a bit difficult to get in. So I would suggest early on, if you're trying to get into this field, make sacrifices early. If there's a local game store, all right, they're hosting a tournament, you want to broadcast, hey, I want to stream this tournament. Can I put it on for you guys or whatever? I got my big break through the LCCC program. Shout out to Paddle and what they do. They bring in, great players from around the world, NA versus EU, I should say, not the entire world, but just those two continents. And they have them face off into like an exhibition style matchup. And they need commentators and streamers for that. And I was commentating and I was like, hey, this is something I'm good at. This is what I want to try. Is there any interest of, and I sent in my reel, I sent in like this is what I can do kind of thing. And they're like, hey, we'll give you a shot. And he let me get on there and I, show what I can do and people connected with it. Okay. And then I started doing the ICL and then I would, obviously the whole time I was doing like my own smaller tournaments, whatever, locally. And then people start to see it and you start to build like a little portfolio or whatever, and people are going to be connected to it. And then once you build passion, or once you build, people are always going to be attracted to passion, and people are going to connect to energy, and people started to connect with what I was doing there, and it just started to build and build and build. And then I believe I came onto the radar with Ravensburger. They saw what I was doing, and they gave me the shot at it, and it's just been all downhill from there. So it happens fast, but you just got to stay motivated, stay on top of it. I literally live, eat, sleep, breathe. This is all I do. This is literally all I do all day long. And it is truly, a gift. So I just try to maximize any opportunities I have. I try to, go to as many tournaments as I can, a lot of time at cost or at a loss. I don't make a lot. There's not a lot of money involved in this thing. And it's just a lot of love and passion. That's kind of what I'm fueled by, I suppose. Sorry, long rant. Just grind it.
Of course.
Grind early, grind hard. Don't stop. Be relentless at your pursuit. If it's something that you want, keep going no matter what. And eventually you'll get to wherever that goal ends up.
I think that's lovely. I would love to chat about this for longer. I really would, but we are coming to the end of our showcase runtime. So just quickly for our listeners, the question of this week, which deck list did you appreciate the most? So you team JDZ, you team Justice, you team Atlantis. You let us know in the comments below. You don't have to pick a deck directly, just let us know which team you're on. We'll tally that all and then let you know who won next week. So I'm excited. Obviously, you should be picking me. There shouldn't be any other option. That should be apparent, but it'll be interesting to see who you pick. Justice, do you want to say any finishing comments before we go?
Well, you know where to find us. Give us a like and a subscribe, and don't forget to tune in next week. JDZ, any shout outs from you before we close the pod?
For sure. I want to shout out to both of you for allowing me to be here on the Arcana Llama. It was truly a pleasure, and listening to my nonsense and seeing my nonsense decks, and just really, it's really, really nice to be here. So thank you so much. And I appreciate that. If you guys want to follow me on JDZQuest everywhere and just hit me up sometime, I'm all around. But seriously, thank you for allowing me to be here. It was a great time.
Thank you so much for joining us. We'll get your socials put into the YouTube channel so that they'll be able to find you there if that's okay with you.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, great. Well, that concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.